Watch this scene very carefully. In the first 3 minutes of meeting this man, Patrick Jane knew 3 things. What he had for breakfast, that he was lying about his wife, and that his daughter was struggling in school. He didn't use magic. He didn't have superpowers. He used something far more powerful and far more real. Over the next hour, I'm going to show you exactly how he does it. Every technique, every tell, every psychological trick. And by the end, you'll see people differently. You'll notice things you never noticed before. Welcome to the mind of Patrick Jane. Chapter 1. The Art of Cold Reading. Let's start with the foundation, the skill that makes everything else possible. Cold reading. Cold reading is not mind reading. It's the art of gathering information so subtly that the other person doesn't realize they're giving it away. And Patrick Jane is the greatest cold reader you'll ever see. Let me show you how this works. Watch this scene. Jane walks in. 30 seconds later, he says, "You're recently divorced, you have a son named Michael, and you're worried about your mother's health." Now, let's rewind and see what he actually noticed. First, the wedding ring tan line. Faded but still visible. Recently divorced. The photo in his wallet. A teenage boy. School uniform. Last name on the blazer. Michael. The worn tissue in his pocket. The slight redness around his eyes. He's been crying about someone he cares about deeply. Given his age, most likely an aging parent. This is what real cold reading looks like. It's not magic. It's extreme observation combined with logical inference. But here's where it gets interesting. Jane doesn't just observe. He uses something psychologists call the Barnum effect, named after P.T. Barnum, the circus showman who said, "We have something for everyone." Barnum's statements are vague enough to apply to almost anyone, but specific enough to feel personal. You have a great deal of unused capacity. At times, you have doubts about your decisions. These statements work because our brains automatically fill in the specifics. In 1948, psychologist Bertram Forer gave his students a personality test, then gave each of them the exact same personalized analysis. He asked them to rate how accurate it was on a scale of 0 to 5. The average rating? 4.26. Even though every single student received identical feedback. Jane uses this constantly. He'll make a statement like, "You're carrying guilt about something from your past, something involving a family member." That could apply to almost anyone, but the person's brain will automatically connect it to their specific guilt, making it feel like Jane knew exactly what happened. Here's the key. Jane says something vague. The person's brain makes it specific. The person thinks, "How did he know about my brother?" When Jane had no idea about any brother. The person did the work for him. Now, you can use this too. Start with observation. Look at what people are wearing. Check for tan lines, wear patterns, accessories. Then make educated guesses based on statistics and context. And when you speak, use open-ended statements that let the other person's brain fill in the blanks. For example, instead of saying, "You work in an office," say, "You deal with a lot of people's problems all day." That could be an office worker, a teacher, a therapist, a nurse. Let them tell you which one. But cold reading is just the beginning. Because once Jane has your attention, once you believe he knows something special, he can do something even more powerful. He can read your thoughts. Or rather, he can read your body. Chapter 2. The Memory Palace. Let's talk about Jane's memory, because this man remembers everything. Every face, every name, every detail from every case. And he's not lying when he says he has a special place in his mind where he stores it all. It's called the method of loci, or more commonly, the memory palace. And it's a real technique used by memory champions worldwide. The concept is simple. Humans are terrible at remembering abstract information like numbers or names. But we're incredible at remembering spatial information. You probably remember exactly where everything is in your house. The method of loci uses this strength. Here's how it works. Step 1, choose a familiar location. Your house, your office, a route you walk daily. Step 2, mentally walk through that location and pick specific stations: the front door, the couch, the kitchen table. Step 3, take the information you want to remember and create a vivid, bizarre mental image. Step 4, place that image at one of your stations. Let me show you Jane doing this. In this scene, he needs to remember 50 names in order. Watch what he does. He's not just repeating the names, he's creating absurd, memorable images and placing them in his mental palace. The first person, Mr. Henderson, becomes a giant hen pecking at his front door. The second, Miss Parker, becomes a park bench sitting in his hallway. The more ridiculous the image, the more memorable it is. This isn't fiction. In 2017, researchers at Radboud University found that just 40 minutes of Memory Palace training could double participants' recall ability. And after just 6 weeks of training, participants showed brain activity patterns identical to those of memory champions. But Jane doesn't just use this for names. He uses it for entire case files. Every detail, every piece of evidence, every witness statement. He stores them all in his palace, organized by case, by date, by relevance.
Think of it like this. Most people's memories are like a messy desk, everything piled up randomly. Jane's memory is like a perfectly organized filing system. Every piece of information has a specific location, and he can retrieve it instantly. And here's the real kicker. This technique works for anyone. You don't need to be a genius. You don't need special brain chemistry. You just need to practice. Let me show you how to build your first memory palace. Right now, think of your home. Start at the front door. That's your first station. Now, what do you need to remember today? Let's say it's a grocery list. Milk. Now create a vivid image. Imagine a giant waterfall of milk pouring over your front door. The more absurd, the better. Chapter 3. The Manipulation Master. Now we get into darker territory. Because Patrick Jane doesn't just read people, he manipulates them. And he's so good at it that you often don't realize it's happening until it's over. Let's be clear. Manipulation isn't inherently evil. It's a tool. Therapists use it to help patients. Teachers use it to motivate students. Jane uses it to catch killers. But make no mistake, when Jane enters a room, he's often trying to control the people in it. Jane's manipulation toolkit is vast, but let me break down his 5 most common techniques. Technique 1, the false confession. Jane will often confess to something that isn't true. A crime, a feeling, a secret. Why? Because people react to confessions. They either confirm it or deny it. Either way, they reveal information. Watch this scene. Jane tells a suspect, "I understand why you killed him." The suspect immediately responds, "I didn't kill him because of jealousy. I killed him because..." Wait. The suspect just confirmed the killing and revealed the motive, all because Jane made a false confession. This exploits something called the correction reflex. Humans have an almost irresistible urge to correct false information. Technique 2, strategic vulnerability. Jane will often appear weak, confused, or even foolish. He'll stumble, make mistakes, act uncertain. This makes people comfortable. They lower their guard. And that's when they're most likely to reveal the truth. This is based on the pratfall effect, psychological research showing that people are more attracted to those who make minor mistakes. Perfection is intimidating. Vulnerability builds trust. Technique 3, the double bind. Jane will give someone 2 choices, both of which lead to the outcome he wants. It's an illusion of choice that actually removes choice. Technique 4, anchoring. This is a neuro-linguistic programming technique where you associate a physical gesture with an emotional state. Jane does this constantly. Every time he mentions the murder, he touches his left hand. He's creating an anchor. Later, when he wants the suspect to think about the murder, he subtly repeats the gesture. The suspect's brain automatically associates that gesture with the murder, bringing the emotions back. Anchoring works through classical conditioning, the same principle behind Pavlov's dogs. Technique 5, the guilt trap. This is Jane's most powerful technique and his most dangerous. He'll make someone feel guilty about something, usually something they didn't do, and then watch how they react. An innocent person will deny it, but a guilty person, their body language will shift. They'll look down. They'll get quiet, because deep down they do feel guilty. This is called projected guilt. Now, I want to be clear. These are powerful manipulation techniques. They can be used unethically, but understanding them is crucial for two reasons. First, you can use them ethically. Second, and more importantly, you can recognize when someone is using them on you. Chapter 4. Pattern Recognition and Deduction. Now we get to what might be Jane's most impressive skill, his ability to see patterns where others see chaos, to connect dots that no one else even noticed existed. Pattern recognition is the foundation of all detective work, but Jane takes it to an extreme level. He doesn't just see the obvious patterns, he sees the subtle ones, the ones that shouldn't be there, the ones that shouldn't be missing. In this case, there have been 3 murders over 6 months. Different locations, different victims, different methods. The police see no connection, but Jane notices something. At each crime scene, there's a cup of coffee. Always coffee, never tea. Always in a blue mug. Always placed exactly 6 inches from the victim's right hand. The police didn't notice this because it seemed insignificant, but Jane recognized the pattern. 3 murders, 3 identical details that shouldn't be identical. This isn't coincidence. This is a signature. And signatures tell you who left them. Jane doesn't just see the pattern. He asks why. Why coffee? Why blue mugs? Why 6 inches? And he realizes these aren't random choices. These are comfort items. The killer is making the victims comfortable before killing them. This is someone the victims trusted. But here's Jane's most powerful pattern recognition technique. He doesn't just look for what's there, he looks for what's missing. In this scene, Jane enters a crime scene and immediately says, "Something's wrong here. There should be a photo frame on the mantel, but there isn't one." The police are confused. How does he know there should be a frame? Jane explains, "There's a dust outline where a frame should be, and in a home invasion, the first thing a thief grabs is valuables, but nothing else is missing. This wasn't a robbery. This was staged." This is called negative pattern recognition, noticing the absence of expected patterns. It's incredibly difficult to train, but it's what separates good detectives from great ones. Chapter 5. The Man Behind the Mind. We've talked about Jane's skills. Now let's talk about the man who has them. Because you can't understand Patrick Jane's methods without understanding his pain. Patrick Jane wasn't born a mentalist. He was born a showman. He traveled with his father, a carnival mentalist, learning the tricks of the trade. But he was talented, genuinely talented, too talented. He started believing his own act. He started thinking he really had psychic powers. And that belief had consequences. Because when he told a room full of people he could help them find a killer, a real killer heard him. And that killer came for Jane's family. Psychologically, Jane exhibits classic signs of complex PTSD. Hypervigilance, he's constantly scanning for threats. Emotional numbing, he uses humor and charm as a shield. And most significantly, survivor's guilt. He believes he deserves punishment for what happened. This guilt is what drives Jane. His mission to catch Red John isn't just about justice, it's about atonement. And his charm, his constant smiling, his playful teasing, that's not who he is. That's a defense mechanism. Psychologists call this smiling depression, when someone appears happy and functional on the outside while struggling internally. But every now and then, the mask slips. And in those moments, you see the real Patrick Jane. Not the charming mentalist, but a broken man carrying unbearable guilt.